wind howled through the towering spires of Zar 9, an alien fortress city that loomed above the ashen horizon like a cursed monument to hubris. The acrid scent of burning metal mingled with the sharp tang of ozone, the air crackling with a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Beneath the cold, unforgiving gaze of the alien aristocracy, a spectacle was unfolding that would become a legendary tale of cruelty, defiance, and retribution. At the heart of the capital, within the execution grounds, a metallic dais hovered, its edges lined with pulsing obelisks bathed in an eerie green glow. Around it, a restless mass of Zeltrix sea inhuman creatures with chitinous bodies and glowing eyes shifted nervously, their sharp mandibles clicking in anticipation. The air hummed with the impending finality of an execution. Above, the sky flickered ominously with the storm clouds that had gathered, as if even nature itself could sense the violence brewing below. In the center of it all stood Hannah Drake, bound and broken. Her body was a canvas of bruises, a cruel testament to the brutal interrogation she had endured. But beneath the physical toll, there was one thing: the Zeltrix had failed to break her spirit. Her eyes, though filled with pain, gleamed with a steely defiance, unbowed by their terror tactics. She would not break. Not for them. Not for anyone. The mechanical noose above her hummed, its cold, metallic surface glistening with deadly intent. Its design was flawless, a cruel execution device that could tighten with the press of a button, ensuring the victim's demise was both swift and absolute. The crowd roared in anticipation, their chitinous bodies writhing with excitement, their alien voices rising in a chorus of mockery and judgment. Standing before her was Commander Zar, draped in ceremonial combat armor, his elongated, insectoid features twisted in cruel amusement. With a swift gesture, he silenced the crowd. His voice guttural, buzzing poured from the speakers, dripping with disdain. "Behold," he crooned, "the Terran traitor, a human who dared to aid insurgents, to spread human lies and poison the minds of those beneath us." He turned his gaze on her, his mandibles clicking in mock pity. "You should have known, mammal, that the Dominion does not tolerate weakness." Hannah's lips curled into a slight, defiant smile as she stood tall, refusing to cower before him. They wanted her to break, to beg, to crumble beneath their gaze. But that was not the way of the humans. She would stand tall, even in the face of death. With a gesture from Zar, the control panel lit up, and a Zeltrix guard, clad in obsidian armor, stepped forward. A single claw hovered over the activation rune. The crowd's murmurs reached a fever pitch as the execution began, the hollow transmission of her demise broadcasting across the quadrant. Hannah's final words were low, barely a whisper, yet they carried across the execution grounds like a curse. "My husband will come for you." Zar sneered. "We know of your so-called general. A relic of war. He will not come." But he was wrong. The news tightened. Pain exploded in her skull as the world began to blur. Her vision narrowed, pinpricks of light flashing in her fading consciousness. The roar of the Zeltrix crowd faded into nothing, and then there was only darkness. 6 hours later, the transmission reached the human fleet, slicing through encrypted networks like a knife to the heart. The images of her death played in a loop in the command chamber of the TSV Vengeance. General Elias Drake stood rigid, fists clenched at his sides. His jaw was so tightly set that it felt as though it might crack under the pressure. The hollow image of his wife's final moments flickered before him, a cruel reminder of what had been taken from him. His officers sat in stunned silence, each of them gripped by the weight of the moment. No one spoke. But Elias could feel an unbearable rage building within him. "She was the best of us," Major Adrian Cole, his second in command, whispered, breaking the silence. "But this is no longer just about strategy. This is about vengeance." Elias's voice was cold, controlled, but beneath the surface, it was filled with the promise of retribution. "Then we go to war." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. War with the Zeltrix Dominion meant everything they had worked for, everything they had fought for was at stake. But for Elias, this was no longer about tactics. This was personal. "We need intelligence," Captain Marcus Vale spoke, his voice grim. "We can't just go in blind." Elias nodded. "Lieutenant Xiao, decrypt every classified Zeltrix communication. I want vulnerabilities, weaknesses. Now." The crew of the Vengeance moved with a quiet, lethal efficiency, preparing for the storm that was about to descend upon the Zeltrix. They would learn, far too late, that their arrogance had invited the wrath of a man who was not just a general but a force of nature. On Zar 9, Commander Zar reclined in his private chambers, the execution of Hannah Drake having gone exactly as planned. But his confidence was short-lived. A message from the High Council flashed on his display. Overlord Karn's image appeared, his voice deep and foreboding. "Commander Zar," he said, his tone heavy with centuries of wisdom, "the execution of the Terran woman was not sanctioned by the Council. You have acted rashly." Zar's antennae twitched in irritation. "The humans are weak. She posed a threat. Letting her live would have emboldened their kind." Karn's mandibles clicked, a sound like the grinding of bones. "You do not understand the ramifications of your actions. Elias Drake is not a man to provoke. If you are wrong, you will not face him with words. You will face him with fire." Zar dismissed the warning, convinced that the Zeltrix Dominion was untouchable. They had conquered countless worlds, reduced entire civilizations to dust. One human, no matter how ruthless, could not change that. But in the depths of space, aboard the Vengeance, Elias Drake was preparing to teach the Zeltrix a lesson they would never forget. The Vengeance descended upon Zar 9 like a shadow, its weapons primed and ready. Elias Drake stood on the observation deck, watching the planet below, his mind already working through the battle in his mind. The Zeltrix were arrogant. They believed they were invincible. But they were wrong. Within hours, the Vengeance had crippled the Zeltrix communications network with a single, surgical strike. The first strike was just the beginning. They hit hard, fast, and with deadly precision. Within minutes, the Vengeance was assaulting the heart of the Zeltrix Dominion. On the surface of Zar 9, chaos erupted. Zeltrix enforcers scrambled to respond, but they were already too late. The human forces had infiltrated their defenses with a ruthlessness that left no room for mercy. Commander Zar tried to fight back, but he had underestimated the fury of a husband bent on vengeance. With his fleet in disarray, Commander Zar tried to regroup, but his efforts were in vain. Elias's forces had already launched a full-scale assault. The battle was not just a war, it was the final, unrelenting revenge for a wife lost to the cruelty of an empire that believed it could crush the spirit of humanity. The fight was brutal. The streets of Zar 9 became a battlefield. Human special forces, led by Captain Vale, moved through the chaos like wraiths. They cut down any Zeltrix that crossed their path, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. They were not there to take prisoners. They were there to make a statement. At the heart of the chaos, Vale and his team breached the Zeltrix command tower. They fought through corridors of alien architecture, taking down guards with brutal efficiency. And at the very top of the tower, they found Zar alive, but utterly defeated. "You killed my wife," Elias's voice rang out as he stepped forward, his hand tight around the grip of his plasma pistol. Zar's mandibles twitched, his arrogance still present even in the face of death. "Killing me won't bring her back." "No," Elias said, his voice icy, "but it will make sure you never hurt anyone again." With that, he fired. The Vengeance soared away from the burning world of Zar 9, leaving nothing but the smoldering remains of a shattered empire. The Zeltrix had been forced to learn a painful lesson: the humans would not be broken, and they would never forget. But this was not the end. The war had just begun. The void between the stars would never be silent again. Elias Drake, General of Humanity, stood at the helm of his ship, the vengeance, as the stars outside stretched into the infinity of space. His wife had been avenged. But as he knew all too well, vengeance was just the beginning. There was still work to be done. And the Zeltrix would learn too late that they had awoken something far darker than they could ever have imagined. For Elias Drake, nothing would ever be the same again. The human war machine had been unleashed, and there was no turning back.